So what barriers have I encountered that I've had to overcome? My wife is a Gallup strengths coach, and she knows over the years that I have complained a lot about my attempts to work with people and build a team and communicate what needs to be built so that it can be built. And I've told her lately that for 5 or 6 years I've been working on a really, really big idea. And for me, I can see all 30 stories of this building. I can see kind of exactly where this will go in 5 or 10 years. It's very clear, it's very distinct. I know the sequence of events that has to happen. And yet it's a very complex long-term project. So Christy, my wife, helped me understand that if everyone I'm working with is on the first floor, that what I need to learn to do is not try to communicate everything about all 30 stories, but to communicate what's the second floor in as much detail and simplicity as possible so that the team can understand kind of what to do. And so I think the biggest barrier, I think my biggest failure in my career was totally related to not being able to communicate clearly the power of an idea. So Ancestry.com, we raised $75 million to build the world's largest genealogy company. But what people don't know is none of that money was raised because of Ancestry.com. It was raised because we had this idea called MyFamily.com that was a free social network for every family in the world, a free intranet. And I actually had that idea in a dream. So one of the things I like to think about is, what really is my ideas and what really is an idea that's given to me that needs to happen. I think sometimes when the world needs certain things, multiple people have the same idea at the same time, as if there's a broadcast message and somebody says they invented the radio and somebody else said they did, or Philo T. Farnsworth invented the television, or was it the Scottish guy? And so I think sometimes the time is right, the circumstances bring forth the idea, and you might be the creator or you might be the recipient of the idea. So the problem with Ancestry.com and MyFamily.com is that MyFamily.com became the fastest growing social network in the world and the top photo sharing site in the world by 2000, but it wasn't making any money. And when the internet bubble burst, Ancestry.com was making tens of millions of dollars a year, and MyFamily.com was growing like crazy and had huge potential, but wasn't making any money. And our investors chose to sideline it and start charging for it and eventually shutting it down. It had the potential to scale to help hundreds of millions of people around the world stay close to their families and strengthen their family ties. Instead, what the world ended up with several years later was Facebook, which is all about breaking things, breaking families, breaking democracy, breaking civil discourse into toxicity. So, but I couldn't convince any investors or any board members that the power of that website was so good and so positive and it was working, and that if you just give it time, that it will pay for itself someday. And so I count that as my biggest failure. The inability to clearly articulate and persuade people that the idea needs to be supported longer until it blossoms. It's like if you planted a forest and expected to harvest fruit the next year when it was a 7-year harvest. Like, you have to be able to explain that. And I think my biggest challenge in my life and creativity is to be able to communicate and persuade, because funding is needed for things like this. Elon Musk is amazing because he's got so many genius ideas, and some of them he doesn't have time to do, so he open sources them. He's like, Hyperloop, here's a way we can transport people or objects 500 or 600 miles an hour through these vacuum tubes. I don't have time to work on it. Here's the plan. And now hundreds of people are working on Hyperloop, all over, thousands of people, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into that because the idea was there and the plan was there, the blueprint was there, and he just open sourced it, and people were drawn to that.